Oh, okay, I guess the microphone is already turned on again. I'll have to remember that for next time. Anyway, oh, gotta turn off the Wolf music, or at least turn it down. This video for WolfQuest, the WolfQuest part, I'm just gonna be running around aimlessly maintaining this entire map's worth of territory, and I'm also just gonna be talking about slavery apologism in slavery apologism and racism in fantasy and sci-fi. Because I can, and I was gonna make it a separate video, but I realized I have my microphone. I can just do them at the exact same time, because in WolfQuest I'm literally just running from one corner of the map to the other to see how long we can maintain this entire map's worth of territory. But anyways, here's the premise. This is a fantasy setting. Imagine that you are born. Also, you can eat the crackers because this microphone doesn't record anything outside of a very narrow radius. Imagine that you are born, and you are born into slavery. No shock there for some people, I'm sure. But now it's not just normal slavery either. You are specifically enslaved up in a giant tree the size of a literal mountain, and everybody else around you who is not a slave has wings, so they can fly away and they can go on little vacations, they can go out on picnics, they can do whatever they want whenever they want, they can leave whenever they want, they can go somewhere else, they can just go and leave and make their own house somewhere else. But you don't have wings because you're a slave. You're just stuck here. There is no way for you to get to the ground safely without dying. It is literally miles, multiple miles below. This is a fantasy world. This is not even following actual Earth rules. You are miles above the ground. And that ground, we are told, is also covered in deadly animals at all times that will kill you instantly, supposedly. And you don't have wings, so everybody else that's not a slave can fly away whenever they want. They also have super strength and all this crap, so they can fight off those super giant evil predators that'll instantly kill you, wingless little slave. But, well, you don't have wings, so you are at the mercy of the people who do. And they want you to be a slave, so you just have to be a slave. Because you might outnumber them, but they have literal mind control powers that force you to be loyal to them. And I'm not even joking. You not only do you not have wings, in the city-state, miles above the ground, with no way to get to the ground, filled with deadly predators, the people enslaving you also have literal mind control powers that make you loyal. They will literally be able to just mind control you, flat out, into thinking that they are the awesomest people ever, and you shouldn't fight them. And not only the mind control, they will also physically abuse you and beat the shit out of you. Constantly, with zero pushback from anybody else. And despite all of this, they always love to claim that you are actually the most valued member of this whole society. Because without you, well, they wouldn't exist. Because you do all of the cooking, you do all the cleaning, you raise all of the children, including the royals' children, who they dump on you the literal moment they're born. And also, you have to be a midwife to those royals. And the royal people will literally, I'm not even joking, attempt to murder you while you are trying to deliver their children, which they will then immediately dump on you as your sole, as you and your fellow slaves are their sole carers. And then these children will grow up to just keep doing the exact same shit. You have to do everything. You have to cook. You have to clean. The few times that the winged people put in the effort of hunting for food for everybody, they will come back with carcasses just fucked up and mangled and most of the meat unusable, and you have to deal with that. And you are also on a strict breeding program. You are not allowed to have children with somebody that you love, because in this society, love just doesn't exist. You're not allowed to fall in love. That's just not a thing that happens. You are only allowed to have children with somebody that the elders or the royals decide you should have kids with. And again, I cannot stress enough, you can never leave. You will literally have to spend your entire life here. Oh, and if you're told that you have to have kids with, like, your cousin or something, you don't get to argue. That's what the rules say, so you gotta do that. Oh, and the only way you can gain any status at all in this society, just even a tiny little smidgen, is if you happen to catch the eye of one of the royals and start sleeping with them. And that's the only way you can gain any bit of reprieve from the constant physical violence that will be enacted against you. Despite these people claiming that they love and cherish you, they will literally beat the shit out of you for years on end, and nobody will say a thing about it because you're just slaves. You don't matter. You're just wingless little slaves who do all the cooking and cleaning and raising the children. And you are also literally never allowed to interact with anybody outside of this whole extended abusive family, because everybody here is related to somebody else, but it's also a literal city-state with who knows how many people. You are never allowed to interact with strangers unless somebody visits and you happen to be lucky enough to see them for 5 seconds. And even if you happen to fall in love with them or just like them and see that they treat people better there, you can't go with them. You are born here, you will die here. And this is all presented as awesome and normal and definitely not slavery, because you enjoy being a slave, so that means you're not really a slave. Even though everybody was rightfully pissed off when J.K. Rowling did this in like the late 90s or whatever year that was, I can't be bothered to look it up. So yeah, slavery apologism is alive and well, and it's okay because you're not really slaves, because you enjoy being forced to do literally every single thing around your home. The cooking, the cleaning, the the utterly improbable number of animals that need to be cleaned and gutted to feed all of these people. You are also expected to go hunting out on the branches of this giant tree, which are also filled with predators, even though this is a thing that the winged people could literally do in 5 seconds with much less danger. Because, again, the winged people are a million times stronger than you and more competent in every way, and they can actually defend themselves against giant predators because they have wings. You have nothing. You don't got shit except for some little tiny cat claws. And yeah, you're expected to do literally everything, including, again, I cannot stress this enough, having to deliver children from somebody who's actively trying to murder you while you do that. And if one of those babies dies, you are definitely the one getting blamed. And those babies will also then immediately be dropped onto you as your responsibility. Because why should we expect royal people with wings to do anything? That's just silly. Oh, and also, this, aside from you being enslaved, there's also strict caste systems for everybody. So, there's also some people who do have wings, but they're also treated as completely useless, and if they ever want to do anything besides be useless, well, that makes them inherently evil, and they're supposedly, according to the book, they're also inherently evil serial killers who are mentally ill in a scary way. Which is just more slavery apologism, because it is literally saying that if you have a problem with the way your bigoted society is structured so that only some people get to be treated with basic decency, and everybody else has to suffer, and you are upset about this, that means you're actually mentally ill. And I'm not even joking, and it means you're a serial killer. Because wanting equal rights for people, even people who are not yourself, means that you're actually secretly a mentally ill serial killer. And this book is supposed to be progressive. Have you guessed what book series I am talking about yet? I'll give you like 3 seconds to guess. 3, 2, 1. If you guessed Harry Potter, no. It is The Books of the Raksura by Martha Wells, which was written, I'm pretty sure the first book came out in 2011. 2011. All the way in 2011. With literal biological essentialism baked into the world, so that some people are literally born as slaves and literally have never given any other option except to be a slave, and we are literally told and expected to believe that this is a good thing, and it's not slavery, totally, because they enjoy it. As though that's not literally just slavery apologism 101, which is the exact same thing that J.K. Rowling did with the House Elves, which everybody rightfully understands as racist. But I guess that's only because J.K. Rowling is open about hating trans people, because turns out most white people do not give a single flying shit about racism or slavery apologism unless it can affect them specifically by the author being bigoted towards them specifically. Because Martha Wells hasn't openly said she hates trans people despite having a shit ton of transmisia in her books, including, like, most recently at the end of 2024. So if you think, well, maybe she's learning, no, she's seemingly doubling down out of pure spite for people criticizing her. So, yeah, that's not good. So anyways, what were we saying? This is the Books of the Raksura series. And the Arbora are the slaves who are wingless, born without wings, and then literally have to deal with literal slavery, but we're told it's not slavery because we're told they enjoy it, despite them not enjoying it. Textual, like literally within the book, we literally have them complaining about it and being upset about it. And even if they did in the book enjoy it, that's literally just still slavery apologism, which everybody should be aware, because these are not real people. She's not writing down people's diary entries who really existed. She made this shit up. She literally decided to have a whole class of people born into slavery, but we're supposed to pretend it's not slavery because they enjoy it. Because she literally decided that slaves enjoy being enslaved. And we are supposed to think that it's perfectly fine and okay for the Arbora to have literally zero chance ever in their fucking lives of leaving their original court, which is what the groups of this species is called. For some reason, I guess because that was a popular trope at the time. But they have literally no chance of ever leaving, no matter how violently they are being abused, no matter how horribly they are treated, no matter if their fucking queen, which is the ruler of the court, no matter how much she is, like, literally trying to get everybody killed by inviting in the, and I'm gonna put this in quotation marks because this is what they are. They are the flying black orcs, because Martha Wells also wrote in inherently evil people who have all black scales and are literally just, the generic fantasy orcs who are just inherently evil and inherently ugly. And she also gave them black scales and just put in a whole bunch of racist stereotypes by making them cannibals, which, if you haven't ever read anything by, like, older than from the 2000s, that is just an inherently racist trope. Because, if you've ever read anything by Edgar Rice Burroughs or contemporaries or from before that, just know, literally any time a character or a race or a species as cannibals, it is inherently racist. I'm not joking. Every single fucking time. To the point that after reading Tarzan for a while, I was reading a short sci-fi story where there was a vampire and somebody described the vampire as a cannibal, and I immediately got enraged before remembering, oh no, this is a time where the word actually fits, because cannibal may as well just be a term for black people and brown people in literally anything older than like the 80s, and some of it even continues to then. You can literally even see this shit in the Pirates of the Caribbean. So anyways, the Arbora are enslaved. They are stuck either in some random stone pyramid thing in the jungle where they can't leave, and we are blamed. We have the failure of their queen, who is literally trying to get them all killed. She literally blames them because Stone, a character in the first book, says that the reason they haven't left this death trap that's like leading to all this off-screen death of people constantly dying from preventable diseases and shit, and people just dying in childbirth and crap because this place is cursed. It's really badly written. We have a character named Stone who we're supposed to love and adore and trust. He tells us that the reason they haven't left this place yet is because the Arbora refused to move. Unless Jade, the princess of the whole place, gets a husband. This is literally a blatant lie, but we're not supposed to understand that it's a lie, even though it is really, really blatantly not true. None of the Arbora, even in that book, talk about they need the princess to get a husband before they'll move. It's literally just made up, and Martha Wells doesn't acknowledge it after saying it, so, like, literally the only thing we can do now is just go, okay, so anytime something goes wrong with the court, despite it very obviously being the royalty's fault, we're just going to blame it on the Arbora, and nobody will ever argue against this because it's such a convenient lie. Like, I literally cannot emphasize enough how blatant this lie is. It's a literal lie. The Arbora are not the ones insisting we gotta stay here where we keep dying and everybody keeps dying. It's literally the sole fault of Pearl, the fucking queen, who is in charge of the entire thing. She's literally just the fucking dictator. And she is literally causing all of these problems and is an abusive sack of shit who lets the Arbora be violently abused all day, every day, for years. But then and refuses to let her daughter take over, even though Jade's would somehow be definitely better than her. She would totally treat people better despite no evidence of that. But Jade at least wants to fucking leave and go somewhere that's not literally cursed. But Pearl won't let that happen because she's just fucking evil and doesn't care about anybody despite all of these people being her extended family. She literally doesn't give a single shit about any of them. She's literally sleeping with somebody, having sex with somebody who is, like, it's really badly, he's way younger than her. Like, I don't even know, we don't know any of their ages, but she is way older than him. He's like her nephew or something like that, some kind of younger male relation, which we don't know the details of because Martha Wells was really fucking bad at explaining the family ties going on here. He could literally even be her son. We just don't fucking know. And we're supposed to be fine with all of this. And then this is also the guy who goes around violently abusing and beating the shit out of the slaves in front of everybody. Everybody's known about this forever. But then the reason we're not supposed to like this character is not because he goes around beating the shit out of slaves that everybody pretends aren't slaves, that they pretend they really care about and are actually the most cherished members of the society, which is just a lie. and it's really blatant slavery apologism. No, we're not supposed to hate him for that. That's not why the other characters don't like him. The reason the other characters don't like him is that this guy, whose name is River, he's getting above his station. Because he was born as a winged person who is unable to have children, and that's called a warrior for the stupidest, most lazy reasons ever. They don't actually do any fighting. They're just called that because Martha Wells thought it sounded cool. And warriors are the... not... what? That's not important. Warriors are, like... it's this... Martha Wells is really fucking weird about misogyny. She seems to think that misogyny is good as long as the characters it's happening to are men. Like, she will literally repeat word for word misogynistic bullshit, but then expect us to clap for it and be happy about it because it's happening to male characters. And, like, that's not how that works. You could make a joke about, like, a woman having a sarcastic comeback to a man about a misogynistic thing he just said to her. But, like, that's not even what's going on here. It's just, we're literally supposed to be okay with misogyny as long as the target is a man. But it's like, I don't want anybody to be told that they exist only to make babies or that they're useless. And, that's not how feminism works. It's not, we should oppress other people and it's fine now. That's legitimately not how that works. And she literally just does misogyny all the time this way, and then she also just does regular misogyny against the female characters. And this whole thing is just gonna be an unstructured rant. But she does this kind of misogyny where she'll say something extremely misogynistic and demeaning, but we're all supposed to be smiling and happy about it because it's being said about a guy character instead of a woman character or a girl. And it's just like, why do you think I should be okay with that statement now? Like, I don't think anybody should be treated as property that exists only to make babies for the higher class person who is attracted to them. And that's not even what's going on with River. With River, the guy who is sleeping with what could literally be his mom, we don't fucking know. His aunt, grandma even, we don't know, because it can't be the grandma, because none of her kids have had kids yet, as far as we know. Martha Wells was really fucking bad at establishing the backstory for these characters because she tried to tell us about their family history, and it's just not working because she wasn't describing anything in a way that made sense. Anyways, River is the main guy who goes around beating the shit out of the slaves, but we're not supposed to be upset with him for that. No, that's just perfectly fine. That's just natural. Nobody has a problem with that. None of the characters dislike him for that. None of them ever tried to stop him, despite many of them having the power to do so. No, what they dislike him for is that he was getting above his station by sleeping with Pearl, the leader of the court, when he is supposed to be a lonely little... not even a guard, because they don't even do that shit. He's literally just supposed to sit around and just sit around, mainly, because Martha Wells doesn't really understand world building basic concepts. They're literally called warriors, the winged people who can't have babies. That's what they do. Oh, and despite them not being able to have babies, there are male and female ones, and the females have breasts, I guess. Probably, for some fucking reason. Because these are dragon people, and they have breasts, I guess, even though they don't actually breastfeed for more than a few days, which is, if you're only going to do it for a few days, then it might as well not happen at all. That's just the stupidest thing ever. But anyways, no, to continue, because I mentioned the actual real life misogyny, not just misogyny, but now we're supposed to laugh because it's happening to a man. So one aspect of the misogyny Martha Wells does in this series is she has one of the female characters get pregnant, and then she gives birth, and tries to murder the midwife, who is a slave, and we're supposed to think, oh yeah, that's fine. And that doesn't even make sense on an, evolutionary point, but I will get to that when I'm done this point. The misogyny here is that she's pregnant, she gives birth, and then literally instantly, she just goes back. She has 5 babies, by the way. And I don't know any of their names because it was really badly written and they don't matter to the story at all, despite the main character, Moon, the guy who's treated like property. Despite his whole character thing being that he wants to be a parent because he was an orphan and he wants, we can presume, we know he wants to be a parent. We can presume it's so he can give kids the childhood he didn't get to have. His whole, that's a whole fucking thing for him, that he wants to have kids and he doesn't care if he adopts because he just wants to help raise children so they can be happy. Despite that being a whole thing of his, these kids mean nothing to the plot, and I don't even remember their names. And anyways, yeah. Jade, the princess of the thing, has babies with Moon. She gives birth. And then, literally, as soon as she gives birth and gets up and walks away, literally, which she also does, she just looks completely normal, like she's never given birth before at all. So, there's literally no long-lasting effects from the pregnancy, and this is just fucking misogyny. If you have babies, if you are pregnant, especially if you have 5 babies at once, I don't care how small they are. Regular babies, human babies are small. You can't give birth and then immediately look like nothing ever happened and you were never pregnant. That is a completely unrealistic and misogynistic expectation, which real men in real life do, because they then fucking shame women for having their bodies change after they were pregnant. And why would you? And we're supposed to, this is supposed to be an empowering thing, that unrealistic beauty standards are naturally lived up to, but why? It's just misogyny. You're saying that women shouldn't look any different after their body goes through an extremely stressing experience for 9 whole months. They should just look as slim and young as they did before the whole thing of making 5 whole babies. And they don't even lay eggs despite being dragon people. That could, if she just freaking laid eggs after a week or something, that would have been better. But she was pregnant and gave live birth. I don't remember how long she was pregnant because this all happened in a short story outside of the main series for some freaking reason. It's terrible. And then the main series didn't bother to tell you, hey, by the way, you missed some things if you are just coming here from book 4 or whatever. So go read this collection of short stories. Anyways, yeah, the whole... What else was I saying about Moon? Come here, kitty kitty. Come on. I forgot what I said I was going to get back to in 5 minutes. Hey. It's okay. She's just being like that. It's okay. One of the cats accidentally scared the other. It's okay. She's just acting like that because she doesn't want you to scare her. Was one of the cats tiptoeing past the other one because she was scared of him, and then he got scared of her because she's acting so suspicious and was like, meow, what are you doing? Now they're both just chilling. Anyways, I have no idea what else I was going to get back to. Oh, yeah, we were talking about River. So, River, the guy, and yes, I am just going to go all over the place because I have autism and ADHD, and probably more. So, yeah, River, the guy with wings, he is a warrior, and he's low class, because the only people in this court that are supposed to have any status or meaning at all are the royal people, and they are the people who have wings, who can have children. And Yeah, that's even all by itself. The fact that the only people with value are those who can make babies. I don't think I need to explain why that's just inherently fucked up as well. Anyways, they don't hate River because he goes around beating the shit out of slaves, including a slave that is supposed to be the most valuable slave that everybody respects and loves and looks up to. No, they don't hate him for that. They hate him for getting above his station by sleeping with the queen of the whole frickin' dictatorship instead of a consort, which is what they're called, which is the winged people who can have kids, who are female, are called queens, and the males are called consorts. And since Pearl is a queen, everybody says she should only be sleeping with a consort, who is much more valuable than a lowly little stinky warrior who's useless, like River. So they literally hate River because he's pushing against the inherent class boundaries that they all expect, and is literally just being used, quite literally used and then thrown away as soon as a quote-unquote real consort shows up. Which is also not only making this a class issue, these people have 6 sexes and genders that go along with that, which are their caste system, because it's literally determined by how you are born and what genitalia or reproductive capabilities you're born with. So it's not only a class issue of hating this guy because he's supposed to be a poor person, but he's dating a rich person, or at least having sex with a rich person. It's also just making it a trans issue because they don't hate him for being a genuinely abusive piece of shit. They hate him for violating the gender norms by doing what the privileged genders get to do instead of what the oppressed ones do, which in his case is being a male warrior, which is the lowest type of warrior with the least amount of status, because female warriors get to be diplomats, or at least announcers for diplomatic parties. And yeah, so he's literally the lowest type of warrior you can possibly be. And they don't get to do anything, and they are just looked down upon by everybody. And yeah, they don't hate him for the things he's genuinely done wrong. They hate him because he dared to go above his station, and that is just inherently classist and just absolutely bullshit. But we're just supposed to go along with this and be fine with it. We're supposed to also hate him for daring to go above his station, and that's just so fucked up. And it's all portrayed as perfectly fine. And then on another part, we also have an Arbora guy named Chime, who, through the power of magic and magical biology, turned into a warrior after years of this court going to shit because Pearl is actively sabotaging every attempt to not live in a place cursed, to make them all die horribly. So a few species in the real world, like clownfish, everybody knows about clownfish. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch more though, but there's species that can change genders and sexes. Well, animals don't really have gender, so they change sex whenever there's a biological pressure to do so. If there's too many males and not enough females, well, you'll just turn to a female. A lot of plants do this, but plants are different from animals. It's kind of hard to make a one-to-one comparison with plants, but there's a bunch of plants that the flowers start off male and then turn into female, which means they shed pollen and then they accept pollen to form fruit, or the other way around. But yeah, Chime does that unintentionally, involuntarily. None of them had any idea this was possible, but after years of being forced to live in this cursed place that is literally killing them all off, I guess his instincts or his DNA is just wow, this place is fucked up. You gotta leave right fucking now. So he woke up one day, and I didn't mention it, these guys are shapeshifters, so they have a stupid, boring human form that doesn't really need to exist, and then they have their dragony forms. So he shifted into his dragon form, wingless, lizardy form one day, and then was suddenly a warrior with wings. And so before this, he was what is called going to be the mentor, which is just the name for like their top healer and teacher and magic person who knows all the shit, like records all the history of the court, helps with all of the healing, teaches everybody else. So he went from that to being a warrior, unable to have kids. We don't even know if Chime ever wanted to have kids because Martha Wells doesn't really care about him, besides him being sarcastic. And this is obviously a traumatic experience because he has gone from one thing to complete and having all of his roles set out for him to just having a completely different thing going on now. And literally nobody gives a shit about him because they literally just mock him for not knowing how to fly. And then he immediately just gets a freaking campaign against him to beat the shit out of him, at all times. And because he's unnatural and, again, defying the gender norms of the court. Because you're not supposed to be able to start out as one gender and then go to another, which is what he has unintentionally done. So, yeah, he is also hated by the court for being unnatural and transing his gender, even though he literally didn't do it on purpose and hates it, and literally just wishes he could go back to his original body. And does he ever receive any support for this? Nope. Nobody gives a shit. Not even Moon, who is supposed to be his boyfriend later. He's just fucking fed up with him complaining about it and wants him to shut up. Literally nobody cares about him at all. Chime went from being at least slightly respected, respected by the other slaves at least, to just a weird, unnatural thing that everybody hates and gets to beat the shit out of, and nobody will comment on this at all or help him. And yeah, this is all extremely fucked up. But Martha Wells doesn't see it as fucked up. She thinks it's just totally normal. We all should be perfectly fine with people being literally born into slavery and told that, well, it's not actually slavery because you enjoy it, right? Even though they don't. And even if even if she wrote them to enjoy it, it would still be slavery apologism because she's the one who decided to make slaves who enjoy being slaves. That's just slavery apologism. That's actual slavery apologism that people did in real life about black people. And yeah, this is all extremely fucked up, but we're supposed to think it's totally cool that all of these characters are living in an extremely, inherently classist, biologically essentialist society built on an abusive caste system that literally determines what you can do from the moment you're born, including whether or not you ever get to leave home and go find somewhere else to live where people treat you better. Because I cannot stress enough the fact that the Arbora cannot leave, ever, because it's just fucking terrible. They're literally unable to escape, even if they wanted to, which she doesn't write them to want to because she is invested in them being happy about it, even though they're not. She didn't even actually write them to be happy about being enslaved. It's just a fucking duty that they are expected to do, and they're like, well, if we don't do it, nobody else will. Because nobody else helps them. And it's like, and this is all supposed to be progressive. We're supposed to think it's cool and normal and, admirable that these people are enslaved. Also, these are two completely different species that have been forced to live together in, well, the Arbora were forced to live with the Raksura, with the Ariad, which are the people with wings. Like, they're two completely different species. They both happen to share the ability to shapeshift into a stupid, useless human form that shouldn't exist in the story at all because it serves no purpose, and a lizardy, dragony form. But, like, that's literally where the comparisons end. Because, like, the winged people, quite literally, at some point in the past, literally just enslaved the Arbora, and then told them over the generations, oh yeah, we totally joined together because we like being together. Because you wanted to join with us. That's definitely what happened, even though you are very blatantly enslaved and have no choice in this matter at all, because we go out of our way to live in places where you couldn't escape from, no matter how hard you tried, unless you invented a hot air balloon and could somehow escape without us noticing, because the winged people can just magically fly super far, super fast, whenever they want. Also, this is a nitpick, but Martha Wells is really bad at writing their flying as a thing that they're actually doing. It might as well just be like skipping a scene. Like, it doesn't ever feel like a thing that's actually happening. Like a real physical thing that they have to contend with. But, yeah. It's just all bullshit. And it's just slavery apologism. And we're supposed to be okay with it. But, like, that's not how this works. It has literally never been how this works. And Martha Wells really loves biological essentialism. And if you've missed the memo, or can't figure it out from the name, biological essentialism is the basis for pretty much all bigotries. It's like misogyny is biological essentialism, racism is biological essentialism, etc. Biological essentialism says that the way you are born determines everything about who you are and what you can do with your life. And that's everything that Martha Wells is doing in this book series, and she's saying that this is a good thing. Even though anybody who watched the Pokemon movie will have heard Mewtwo say that whole iconic quote about how it's not the way you were born that determines who you are, but what you do with your life. No, Martha Wells says, no, not in my fantasy world, not in my sci-fi setting. That's not allowed. You can't have free will. How you are born determines what jobs you're allowed to do, who you're allowed to have children with, and whether or not you are a valued member of society. And we're supposed to think this is cool. And like, even this happened all the way in 2011. This book didn't come out in like the 80s or something. It was 2011. These fucking tropes of everybody's status is determined by birth, and this is cool and normal, and we should not think twice about it or be upset by it. This crap was outdated, and embarrassingly outdated, in 2011. Like, people were like, yeah, can we stop doing this crap? This is embarrassing. Why are you saying this crap about people? Why are you saying that people's entire lives should be determined by whether, like, what color your skin is? And if I did it, yeah, because, again, she's also doing blatant racism in this series by having racist caricatures of flying black orcs who all have black scales, who have all black scales. And these people are called the Fel, the flying black orcs that are inherently evil. They're called the Fel, and these supposedly good guys who just do slavery and are supposed to be fine with it are called the Raksura. Raksuran consorts are the only ones that can have black scales, but they're just treated like property and expected to make babies for whatever queen decides to own them. And they are literally treated like property because they are literally property to these people. And we're also supposed to be fine with that and think it's awesome because it's happening to men instead of women. So that makes it okay. It's like, that's not how that works. Even if you are inverting misogynistic tropes, the whole fucking message should still be, this is bad, nobody should ever have to deal with this, because that's how bigotry works. It's never okay. You can have a story where men are oppressed, but the message still needs to be that literally nobody should be oppressed for their gender. This isn't a radical concept, this is just basic frickin' decency. And no, Martha Wells doesn't do that, because that would be boring, I guess. Having a society where everybody's treated as equals and literally nobody is literally considered property, and slavery isn't allowed. Because God forbid we have a magical fantasy society where everybody does the dishes. No, it just has to be the slaves. They can just do everything, and the royal people will sit around and look pretty, I guess. And also get everybody killed by refusing to leave a place that is blatantly cursed and getting everybody killed, even though you've known about this for years and could leave at literally any time, and you're just refusing to because reasons. Oh, and also, yeah, the whole thing about Pearl just refusing to leave a place that she knows is cursed and has been killing people for generations, literal generations. We're at the end of this after establishing how evil and abusive and uncaring she is. We're just told we should actually forgive her because she's just depressed, so that makes everything magically okay. And it's like, that is literally not how that fucking works, and you don't get to blame her literally being an abusive dictator on depression, because depressed people are not out here being dictators, enslaving people, abusing people, and forcing everybody to live in a place that is blatantly cursed and killing you all. That's just ableism. It's also just bullshit, because even if a dictator was depressed, that doesn't make everything they've done magically okay, because it literally gets hand-waved away with her being depressed, so that makes it all okay. So she gets to stay in charge despite being criminally incompetent and negligent, and the whole violently abusive thing, and forcing everybody to stay in a place that's cursed because she couldn't be bothered to leave for some fucking reason. We're gonna hand wave that away. Her daughter can't take over, and we're supposed to be fine with this because, well, she's depressed, so that means she gets to do anything she wants. Which is just blatant abuse apologism, because actual abusers of children and domestic partners will use this exact fucking excuse to defend abusing people. Oh, well, it's okay, you can't be mad at him for abusing you because he's diabetic, so he has low blood sugar, so anything bad he does or says to you is just because of his low blood sugar, so you can't be upset with him. There's nothing he can do about it. He's just diabetic. Or in this case, she's just depressed, so it's okay that she's beating the shit out of people and attacking people and forcing everybody to live in a place that is literally cursed, that she could say, okay, let's leave at literally any time. Like, the book tries to make all of these excuses about why they haven't left yet, but they're all just bullshit. They say, oh, well, we can't leave yet because the Arbora can't fly, so we gotta find a flying boat to transport them all. Even though they definitely didn't use a flying boat when they got there. Also, they have baskets. They have giant baskets. And they could literally just put a bunch of Arbora in some giant baskets and have the flying people fly the baskets. Like, they're super strong. They are more than capable of doing this. But no, we gotta pretend that we actually need to go on some quest elsewhere to get a flying boat. Otherwise they can't leave. And also, I should say that in this first place they were at, like, they could literally have just walked out, because this place, unlike the giant mountain tree, which is what it's called, the mountain tree they were in later, this place is actually connected to the ground. And the Arbora here were able to walk around on the ground and go out and hunt and shit by themselves, without being eaten at every single instant. Almost makes you think that the mountain trees are designed specifically to keep the Arbora enslaved, doesn't it? But yeah, here, they could legitimately go out and walk. And there are other people in this fantasy world who just live on the ground all the time, because people with wings are extremely rare. And shapeshifters are pretty much unheard of except for the inherently evil black flying orcs. So they literally could have just walked away from this cursed place. Like, they literally could have done that at any time. If only the winged people would actually do something like be guards or something. Like, yeah, Martha Wells tries to make all of these excuses and tries to blame it on the Arbora, despite never actually writing any of the Arbora to even remotely say anything about that lie that she just had the character tell. And like, Martha Wells didn't intend it to be a lie. But when you have a character say that, and then you literally never back it up, and in fact disprove it multiple times, what you've done is made that character a fucking liar. And yeah, they're literally just blaming everything on the slaves, when it is literally their dictator's fault. And this isn't purposeful commentary, because she didn't even do this on purpose, because we're supposed to think that Pearl is a good leader despite all of the horrible things she's done and the fact that she's refused to leave. Yeah, it's bad. Where is this den? But yeah, it's just filled with slavery apologism, and we're all supposed to be fine with it, and we're supposed to think that characters who say that the Arbora are servants, we're supposed to think that they are comically wrong. Because those silly people, the Arbora enjoy being enslaved, and they're actually cherished. Now, ignore all the parts where they just got the shit beaten out of them, and nobody batted an eye. We totally cherish them. Seriously, for real. And it's like, it's just ridiculous, because, like, if you just go along with what the book is telling you by what the characters are saying out loud, then sure, you can come to that conclusion. But if you actually read the book and look at what is actually happening in the book and what the characters are doing and saying, then yeah, they are literally just enslaved, and they don't actually enjoy it, but they know that if they don't fucking cook and clean, there will be no food, and they will live in a shithole. And if they don't raise the royal people's children, then the children will just die, so they have literally no choice in what they're doing. And again, I cannot stress enough that these people just do eugenics, and we're supposed to be fine with it. And you know those black flying orcs? Yeah, a whole big thing in one of the later books is that, well, the heroic mini climax for this problem is that we're now going to do eugenics against them to make them be nice by controlling their breeding so we can get rid of the bad genes that make them evil. I'm not joking. Also, these evil black flying orcs, inherently evil black flying orcs, as to further the racist caricatures, just love to go around raping people and diluting the good people's precious blood by injecting the evil genes of the evil black flying orcs. And of course the children who result from these rapes, because we can't just have any more racist caricatures. They're cannibals and rapists. Hide your women. Hide the white women. Hide the Raksuran queens, or the frickin' black cannibals will get to them. This is not fucking progressive. This is just default fucking racism that has been popular for decades, and we're just supposed to pretend it's progressive because it happened in 2011 instead of 1911 or before. Anyways, yeah, the black flying orcs, the Fel, have stolen, and that's the word that's used, not kidnapped, stolen some consorts to breed with, because the consorts are also slaves. They are literal property. They have no rights of their own, and they literally belong to whatever woman or queen can get them pregnant first, and then they have no choice but to ever they have no choice to ever leave them after that, because if you get them pregnant and you are not going to have a choice in that either, well, then you belong to them. Nothing you can do about it. Good luck trying to leave. So, yeah, there's some hybrid offspring out there of the good guys, Raksura, and the evil black flying orcs, the Fel. And of course, the children of these things are not inherently evil, so that a literal child, who it is implied would be like in kindergarten if she were a human, becomes the leader of a Fel group, which is called a flight, which is stupid. Because by having some good Raksuran genes, only she can teach them to have morals and not eat people. And part of the fucking eugenics plan is to just breed in some more good genes, and this is all blatantly fucking racist and literal eugenics, but we're supposed to think it's good because one of the most delightful, little, funny, nice old guy characters, his name is Dylan, he's the one who suggests the eugenics plan, and then everybody is immediately overjoyed and jumps on this plan, including a Fel character whose name we literally never learn, and whose pronouns we don't even know, because I'm just going to use the pronouns they, because this character is referred to as either he or it, entirely depending upon how much the main character racistly wants to commit hate crimes against him at the moment, despite him being a child and never doing anything to hurt anybody. Like, they are literally just following these people around because they are trying to get help. Literal child, and is only ever referred to as he when the character is not feeling particularly murderous, and that immediately gets dehumanized into being an it as soon as the protagonist wants to murder them for literally no reason except hate crimes. And you know, there is a way to write about characters who have had bad experiences and are wary, but like the way that Martha Wells writes all of these characters interacting with this literal child from the Fel, it quickly leaves behind the territory of they're reasonably wary around an enemy of their people, and just nosedives into this is just flat out racism at this point. This child, and I cannot stress enough, they're a literal child, like a little kid. Everybody, they can breathe or just glance at somebody, and everybody in the room is resisting the urge to gouge their eyes out. And it's like, this is beyond reasonable. This is literally just racism at this point. That's what you're doing, Martha Wells. It's literally just racism. None of this is okay behavior, and there could have been a way to write it, but that's not what she chose to do. She just chose to make them all violently murderous, including the people who have never actually been in a fight with a Fel or even been threatened by one. So they have literally zero excuse to be treating this literal child like a deadly threat. And it just goes way beyond the fucking pale. And I even noticed this the first time I was reading the books, and it is so fucking over the top. But at no point are we supposed to see these people's reactions as ridiculous or absurd or over the top. We're supposed to think that these are the reasonable reactions that they should be having when it's a child that they outnumber like 6-1 or more, who has made no threatening moves towards them at all. And we're supposed to like be fine with their behavior and think, yeah, that's a reasonable way to react to a literal child. Yeah, no, it's just racism. You can have different species be reasonably wary around a species that has personally threatened them before, but you can also go way beyond that, which Martha Wells did here multiple times over, and now you've just gotten racism. I think this is, oh, no, it's focus. Are you stealing my spot? So, yeah. That's what the territory looks like now. I'm just gonna keep going out to... get a piece. But yeah. This is a book series that came out in 2011. Not 1911 or anything like that. Not 18 something something. No, 2011. With all of these extremely outdated and embarrassingly bigoted tropes just baked in and portrayed as awesome. We're supposed to think it's cool and romantic that Moon, the protagonist, is treated like property and is treated the way women have been in misogynistic books and societies. It's literally treated like property whose only value is whether he can make babies for the person who owns him. And we're supposed to think that's okay, and it's like, alright, but you're just doing misogyny and expecting me to be okay with it because the person you're applying it to happens to be a man. And it's like, I don't want anybody to have to deal with misogyny, actually. I don't think anybody's entire value as a person should be reduced to, but can you make babies for me? And I don't think anybody should be treated as property by the person who is supposed to care about them and protect them. I think that's kind of wrong. I don't think there's ever any good excuse for misogyny or slavery or treating people like property. That's not really the kind of world I want to live in, and I don't think it's the kind of world anybody who's actually a feminist wants to live in, or just has basic freaking morals. Anyways, please suggest names for these pups, because I literally always forget that I need to come up with names for them, so... yeah, I don't know what to name them. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep talking about this series forever, because nobody else that I have ever seen is really talking about the issues literally baked into it that we're just supposed to pretend are perfectly fine. Oh, and I mean, I have seen people criticizing it, but not enough, because there's a crap ton of people who just go, yeah, it's awesome that women, or in this case, men, are treated like property, but it's literally just misogyny again, but directed towards men again this time, and we're just supposed to be fine with that because of that. And it's like, no, nobody should be treated as property. This isn't a radical concept. This is a basic concept of basic decency. Nobody should be treated as property. Slavery is bad, even if you write the slaves, and she didn't even write the slaves to be happy about it. We're still supposed to think that they're not slaves because she tells us they enjoy it, so that makes it okay, even though she was literally too lazy to write them actually enjoying it, which wouldn't have made it better, but at least would have been consistent with the bullcrap she's trying to get us to accept, which is unacceptable if I haven't made that clear enough. But yeah, it's just freaking ridiculous, and not how any of this works. And I'm making this video specifically because other people have been criticizing the fact that she's literally just using racist tropes and made the fell racist caricatures and expects us to be fine with literal eugenics and misogyny. And she obviously has seen some of these criticisms of the racism in her writing that's extremely blatant. And her reaction is to find like 2 reviews by one person who's saying that she's not racist, and that if you think that the fell are racist caricatures, despite the fact that they literally are racist caricatures and how many racist tropes they're using, that means that you think that British colonizers were evil. That's literally the argument this single reviewer is going with, and these are the reviews that Martha Wells is overjoyed to find and wants to share immediately. Like, I'm not even joking. Literally somebody said, if you think that the fell are written as inherently evil, which they are, she literally told us that they have bad genes that need to be eugenicsed out of them to make them not be evil, racist caricatures who go around raping and eating people. This reviewer said that if you think that they're written to be inherently evil, then that means you also think that British colonizers were evil, and that's not true, so therefore it's not true that the Fell are written as inherently evil racist caricatures. And A, yes, the Fell are literally written as inherently evil racist caricatures. B, yeah, British colonizers were actually evil. What in the fuck kind of universe do you live in where you think that saying British colonizers weren't evil is a reasonable statement? The people who committed too many genocides to count, and you think they're not evil. So you're using that to defend really blatant racist writing that is using racist tropes that were outdated and embarrassingly racist long before it was even published. And this is like, out of all the many reviews Martha Wells has gotten for these series, including people criticizing the racism, which is extremely basic racism, these are the only reviews she has felt the need to share and showcase and show off to people, because she's so excited by somebody saying, if you think this book is racist, I bet you think British colonizers were evil too. And it's like, yeah, both of those things are true. This book is racist, and colonization is actually racist and evil. Like, and this was the final straw for me, because I read these books. I was looking at the fact that the first one came out in 2011, and I was like, okay, well, maybe she has grown as a person in the meantime and is educating herself and is, just getting some basic morals that I had as a literal 5-year-old. Literally, as a 5-year-old, I was yelling at my mom to stop being racist. Like, you can't even say, well, no, my mom is still extremely fucking racist, and as a literal goddamn 5-year-old, I was yelling at her for it. And that wasn't something she taught me. I just knew it was bad to be racist. And it's like, I was like, okay, these came out in 2011. Maybe in the meantime, since she's written these, she has been, learning to not be racist. Maybe she is improving off screen and we just don't see it because it's been a while since she posted a book. But then I started reading the Murderbot Diaries. And the entire premise of wow, this snow is so bright. We'll just be walking on a blank white. That's how snow works in real life. If you've never seen snow, this is quite literally what it looks like sometimes. Anyways, I was like, okay, well, maybe she's just improved off screen and has, no pun intended, improved off screen, improved behind the scenes, and is becoming less racist and understands that these books were bad. And then I started reading the Murderbot Diaries, and the Murderbot Diaries are a fun, extremely short, extremely light reading series about a robot named Murderbot that is an android, or an anthroid, which is a version of android or gynoid that doesn't put gender as like the main identifier. And ANTHRO is just for human, which is where anthropomorphism, etc., anthropoid, etc., etc. So Murderbot is an anthroid. It is non-binary. It uses its pronouns. You'll notice that those are the same pronouns that Martha Wells used to hate crime the fictional child in her book that was a racist caricature, and then is treated with racism within the series, and we're supposed to be fine with it and think it's a reasonable response to a child. This series is also chock full of biological essentialism, and that just starts out in the very first with Murderbot being non-binary, using its pronouns. And before we go any further, for the record, I am non-binary and my pronouns are literally its, which was very funny to me when I first started reading this, because I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't expect to find a character who used the same pronouns, but okay. And yes, I was using these before I read this, which is very funny to me because I feel like most people would go, oh, you only started using those because of that book. And it's like, no. No. You got that backwards. Anyways, yeah, I'm non-binary. My pronouns are it, its. I do not particularly enjoy identifying as a human because that's boring. And as you can tell from me playing Wolf Quest. But, yeah. So it's not inherently a problem for your non-binary characters to be literal robots or aliens or whatever. But that becomes a problem. And I'm sure anybody who's non-binary is already aware of this. This is a exorsexist trope. Exorsexism is the name for the bigotry against non-binary people. Exor, or exo, is a prefix that means outside of, or whatever, like exoplanet. It's for planets outside the solar system. And yes, this is just going everywhere all at once. But, yeah, it's perfectly fine to have a protagonist who is a robot, who is non-binary and uses it, its pronouns. That becomes a problem, though, with just basic bioessentialism, aka assuming that how you are born dictates how you are allowed to exist as a person. And that is what Martha Wells is doing with this series. The only reason that she made Murderbot non-binary is specifically because Murderbot is a robot. It has no genitals, which it tells us all the time when explaining its gender. So therefore, it has no gender, because Martha Wells thinks that whatever genitals you have is what determines your gender. And this book, without checking Google, came out in 2017, if I'm correct, if I'm remembering correctly. So, no, for me wondering, maybe she has unlearned some of this biological essentialism since 2011 when she first started writing The Cloud Roads. And the answer is big fat no, because literally, the only reason Murderbot is written to be genderless is because it doesn't have any genitals. It has no gender because it has no sex, and Martha Wells thinks that sex and gender are the same thing, and that you can only have a gender if you have genitals. And, imagine you, person listening to this, watching my Wolf Quest video. Imagine if one day you woke up and your genitals were gone. Would you suddenly decide, oh, I don't have a gender now because I don't have genitals, so therefore anything about me just isn't allowed to exist anymore? Or if you were put into the body of a robot, this goes especially to the cis people out there. If you were put into the body of a robot, would you suddenly stop identifying as a man or a woman or whatever you identify with right now? Would you suddenly go, okay, well, I have to let people use it, its pronouns for me and be fine with this? No, most people wouldn't. And if you answered yes, you might not be cis. And you can use it, its pronouns if you want. I'm giving you permission. But, yeah, Martha Wells literally only decided that Murderbot is non-binary, specifically because it is not human and has no genitals, and she thinks that the only genders that exist are binary ones that are tied to your sex. Let me send him out. Keep going. Okay, there he goes, I think. We're gonna go down here. Well, see if the map will let us go down here. I can't really see it very well, but there's a dot on this, and this, and this, and those are the ones I can't control because that's theoretically where they have their den in the game. And you can't actually see them at their den or anything. It's not like an actual thing because the developers didn't want to do that. But yeah, they have to have at least one hex while they're on the map at all. Unless I kill them all. I actually don't know what would happen now because it's a saga. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the biological essentialism in the Murderbot Diaries. Yeah, that never improves. Because in November 2024, I think it was November, it might have been October or something, 2024, the 7th Murderbot Diaries book came out, which is actually the 9th story in the series, because there are 2 short stories. One with an obnoxiously long title that I hate so much. Also, side note, the titles for the Murderbot Diaries books are completely useless, and the most obnoxious thing I've ever seen, I think, in books. The most obnoxious titles ever. The first book is called All Systems Red, and that's where we meet Murderbot and like 7 human characters that some of them show up later, some of them don't, most of them don't. And this is where we learn that Murderbot doesn't have a gender because it doesn't have genitals, and Martha Wells thinks that this is how gender works. She thinks that not having genitals inherently means you're non-binary. And you're thinking, okay, well, the obvious solution to this is to have some robots who do have genders, or some humans who are non-binary and genderless, right? And you are correct, that is the solution to this problem, because it's perfectly fine to have robots or aliens or inanimate objects that are also alive, or whatever you want, to be non-binary and use genderless pronouns, as long as you also have characters of that same style, like aliens or robots, who use other pronouns, and especially that you need to have human characters who are non-binary and use genderless pronouns, which in this case is its. That's how you fix that. That's how you make it not a stereotype, by expanding it to not just say, ha ha ha, the only way to be non-binary is to be a literal robot who has no sex and is as smooth as a Barbie doll down there, with no boobs or Adam's apple or anything like that, nothing to indicate gender. That's the only way not being non-binary and using its pronouns can exist. As you can tell from my voice, probably, that's not how this fucking works. I don't have a non-gendered to anybody else voice. You're probably assuming my gender, or what I was born as, while you listen to this. And yeah, we've had 7 books in this series, plus 2 short stories, so that's 9 stories since like 2017, assuming I remember the date correctly. I'm not doing that math. Now I will do that math. So yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. It's like 7 years. It's like almost 10 years now of the Murderbot Diaries existing, and we've had 2 for the first 6 books that existed of this series, we had no non-binary human characters except for one named Rami, who appears for is actually doing something on screen for 2 pages and then gets kicked off screen for the entire rest of the book and is never brought up again. Rami was introduced in the 2nd book as a freaking background character who uses the pronouns ter, which we are told is for the gender called tercera, which just means third, which is an accepted gender in some little star system thing. That is all the information we get about Rami and this gender that is literally translates to third. So we have absolutely no idea the context for this. We don't know if this is a third gender that you get assigned at birth, or if this is actually, I just forgot the word, going against the gender norms thing that is not actually accepted by the society. Because one of these things Martha Wells is more likely to be okay with. She's more likely to be okay with you having 3 genders that you could get assigned at birth instead of 2, because that still lines up with the biological essentialism. For all we know, tercera could just be the gender you get assigned if you're intersex at birth. We don't know, because Martha Wells hasn't bothered to give us any more information about this, and going from her whole last multiple decades of writing, that's probably the most likely one. Let me get some water. yeah, Rami appears, is introduced with 3 other characters, and then is never seen again because T immediately gets bustled off screen so that a character who just uses regular she, her pronouns, who we have to assume is a cis woman, just gets to be the human of the week, as I jokingly call it, for the first few Murderbot Diaries books. They were pretty formulaic, where Murderbot just hangs out with like one new human, maybe one new robot, and they are usually never seen again, which has been true so far, except for the characters from the first book. And that's another problem, but we will get to that. Right now we are talking about the non-binary humans that for sure exist in Murderbot. And so far it's just Rami, who was literally just a token character. No. Can I not go? I was going too far south. Let's try this. I might just not be able to go over there. Come on, let's go. Yeah, until now the 7th book that is out, which I just forgot the name of because the titles are useless, and I cannot stress enough how useless the titles are. It feels like Martha Wells or her publishers just needed some cool sci-fi sounding words and just slapped them all into a random word combiner to come up with the titles, because they mean nothing and are impossible to tell apart because they have nothing to do with the story. Okay, now I remember. The 2nd book is called Artificial Condition, which has nothing to do with the story except for some really contrived and really fake sounding quote that had those words in it in the book that isn't, like, important in any way. It's literally just put in there to justify the title, and it's bad. It's a bad title, because I could list out the names of the books, and I guarantee you most people who are diehard fans of the series wouldn't even be able to tell you which one is which. Not even the person who recommended the series to me can tell them apart. Anyways, after book 2, look, you're already limping. After the first series, or the first book, we had 0 non-binary human characters that were confirmed to be non-binary until all the way in the newest book, book 7, which is the 9th story published with Murderbot as a character. And I shouldn't name these guys, but I'm too lazy. I think this is Buffalo Plateau, so I'm gonna kill a yearling here probably. Fun fact, if you're playing in easy mode, as long as you have good health, you can just let them bite you because they'll do more damage to themselves that way than they are to you. And I'm just gonna let them bite me because you can see their health dropping. It's a slow drop, but it's better than nothing, and it lets me regain my stamina. Anyways, in book 7, we have another non-binary character who uses neopronouns be introduced, and it was really apparent to me, like, immediately, that this character is just chimed from the books of the Raksura, but, like, a human now with some neopronouns. Like, everything about this character, whose name and pronouns I don't actually remember, so sorry about that. I don't even remember what letter the pronouns started with. No, I'm not traveling to another killing people. But this character is, again, literally just a token character in the most literal sense. This character literally just shows up for like 5 seconds to drop some meaningless backstory and then disappears. Like, you couldn't get any more blatantly tokenizing if you tried, because this character's on screen for like maybe 5 pages max, and is literally just there to drop some exposition to start the plot of this book. And this book is also just horribly written from start to finish. kill you too. See, look how much this one's health had gone down from just letting them bite me. Ah. Boo. It's not fair that they can walk where I can't. Yeah, the character in the 7th book that is confirmed to explicitly use neopronouns, pronouns other than she, her, or he, him as a human. This character appears for like 5 seconds in the overall scheme of things. Just drops some exposition, which is badly written and horrible, and then leaves, and then is never seen again, because this character doesn't... Oh, baby! Wait, no. I have pup deaths turned off, so I don't need to go back immediately. Yeah, this character just that's the blatant token character. And there's even a new to us human character in this series that gets to run around with Murderbot. And his name is Tariq, and Martha Wells is so fucking bad at writing that Tariq was actually introduced in the book before this, and I counted, had exactly 18 words of dialogue and did nothing, and was just literally just a background character who happened to have a name. And then in this book, Martha Wells is just writing it as though we all already know him and know who he is and care about him, and that she doesn't need to introduce him again. And it's really bad. And like, she could have just given Tariq those neopronouns, since he's like one of the 2 humans that are running around with Murderbot the whole time in this book. But that wouldn't be Martha Wells' style, which is what she doesn't want to have human non-binary characters, because that would, in prominent roles, because that would violate the biological essentialism that she's been doing for decades now. The only reason Murderbot and the other robots in this series are allowed to use its pronouns is because they are literal robots. They are literal objects, and she doesn't even see them as people within the story. Obviously, she doesn't see her fictional characters as real people in real life. Nobody does. But she literally doesn't even see the characters as people within the setting, because there is an interview that she gave. Wow. I don't think I can go over here. There's an interview where she was asked something about artificial intelligence, the generative AI bullshit, and to sum up her answer to this, it's that all of the robots in the series, including Art, if you've read the series, you know who Art is, including Murderbot, because Murderbot is also artificial intelligence. It is literally a fucking android. It is not human. Doesn't have a human brain. It has some human brain tissue, but it is literally an artificial intelligence that just happens to be partly organic, which is a freaking thing that has existed in sci-fi forever now. Yeah. She literally says in this interview, which has now been deleted from the original website, and the only reason I have proof that it exists and that I didn't just imagine the whole thing is that it was saved to the Wayback Machine and linked to on the fandom Murderbot wiki. And I hate fandom wiki, but this is the only thing they've ever done good, because they archived it. So yeah, in this interview, she literally says that the bots, aka all of the robots in this story, are just more advanced artificial intelligence, quote, around artificial intelligence by me, which aka large language models and frickin' plagiarism machine. But they're just slightly better at being able to appear actually intelligent, but they aren't actually capable of creating anything for themselves. They're incapable, specifically, of analyzing data and using it to predict the future and all of this crap. And it's like, so you literally don't even see your own robot characters who you created and based this whole story around as real people within the setting. You think they are just more dressed up freaking whatever, like Google AI crap, or Grok, or whatever Elon Musk is doing. And, it's really clear why this interview was deleted, because somebody in the PR realized, oh shit, maybe don't tell your audience that you literally don't see the robot characters that they are supposed to see as people within the story that deserve equal rights. Maybe don't announce to everybody that you literally don't even see your own characters as being people within the setting. And we already pretty much knew that, because Murderbot is a former slave. No other former slaves in this entire series matter, though, unless they're human, and even then, they barely matter. They just exist off-screen to make other people sad. Murderbot is a former slave. Murderbot goes around murdering currently enslaved people who have literally no choice about what they're doing all the fucking time. And the final fucking straw for me was this 7th Murderbot book, because I was talking about the biological essentialism when it comes to trans people, wasn't I? Yes, I was. And in the 7th book, we have a character whose name I don't remember, but Murderbot is describing this character and saying that the character's gender is something that comes across from some computer interface, they've got space Facebook, sci-fi Facebook or something like that. It says that this character's gender, which doesn't translate properly, is 2 lowercase b's. Oh crap, I knew it. Easy mode is so easy. Okay, where was I before the cougar interrupted? Okay, yeah, this character whose name I don't remember is being described as they enter the scene, and I don't remember what pronouns this character uses, because this whole thing is only for 5 seconds. Bear Claw, go get the babies. I'm trying to have him babysit so they can stay outside so they don't get fleas. Come on. Thank you. This whole interaction lasts less than I think a page, but Murderbot is scanning the people's space Facebook, we're just gonna call it that, their social media feed on the space Wi-Fi, fancy sci-fi Wi-Fi, and this character's gender is listed as 2 lowercase b's that apparently doesn't translate, even though that seems like a translation. It just needs an explanation that's not the same thing as not translating. And then Murderbot says something along the lines of, I don't care about asking humans what their stupid genders and pronouns are, because that's a stupid human waste of time and all this crap. And it's this was the final straw for me giving Martha Wells any benefit of the doubt, because you might have noticed at the very start I said that Murderbot uses its pronouns, and all of the other robot characters also use its pronouns. Despite this, none of the characters in this series have ever used the word pronouns. I'm not even joking. The word pronouns, or pronoun, singular, did not exist in this series until the very last book. And I have to assume it's because Martha Wells got pissy about people asking her to have Murderbot actually explicitly tell people its pronouns are its. Because despite writing a character with its pronouns, she's literally never had any character say this out loud, including Murderbot itself, and she's never had another character ask Murderbot what its pronouns are, which has led the majority of the fandom, which is mostly cis people, to just deciding that Murderbot's pronouns are whatever they think, even though its pronouns are actually its, and that is what it is referred to by other characters in the series. But because Martha Wells literally chickened out and took the lazy, shitty way out by making this be her first thing narrated in first-person point of view that I can tell, because I read all of her books except for Witch King, like the first 2 necromancy thingamajiggies, and the second Emilie and the Hollow World book. I've read all of her books except for I think 4 of them, and that includes the brand new book that is, I don't have any money to buy, so I'm not reading it. Yeah. Everything she has written until the Murderbot Diaries was in third-person perspective, and of course all of these characters narrated in third-person perspective used either he, him, or she, her pronouns, and to be honest, it was mostly he, him pronouns, because despite all of her pseudo-feminist things she's trying to do, or pretending to try to do, she really doesn't like having female protagonists, and usually she's fine with a male character, that male narrator / protagonist, getting the whole book to his perspective alone, like with Moon and various other things. But if there's a female protagonist, well, she has to trade perspectives with a male character, and it's like, you're trying to pull all this pseudo-misogynistic, or, I mean, it is misogynistic, this pseudo-feminist shit by saying that misogyny is okay as long as we do it to men instead of women. Literally the exact same rape apologism and shit. But then she doesn't even actually write female characters to be allowed to have the whole book to themselves. They always have to share the spotlight with a male character. And all of these other things that I've read so far, which is all but like 4, unless she has some other secret older books hidden somewhere that's not listed online, they're all in third-person perspective, which means when Moon goes, I'm just going to make up a scenario, when Moon goes to the grocery store, it's Moon went to the grocery store and he brought his reusable bags because he didn't forget them in the car, and he bought milk and eggs and blah blah blah. Now when Murderbot goes to the grocery store, which never happens, just for the record, when Murderbot goes to the grocery store, Murderbot, who uses its pronouns, but because she made the purposeful decision to have this be in the first-person perspective, instead of saying, it went to the grocery store, it remembered its reusable bags, instead of forgetting them in the car, and it bought eggs and milk and blah blah blah, it's, I went to the grocery store, I got eggs and milk and blah blah blah. So, she has explicitly and very purposefully chosen the style of writing that would let her get away with never actually saying Murderbot's pronouns, which are its, unless in the very specific scenario of it is overhearing a conversation of other people talking about itself as though it is not in the room. That is the only time we ever hear Murderbot's pronouns used, because every other time it's in first-person narration, which means Murderbot is just saying I, me, etc. And this has led all of the cis people in the fandom, and some of the trans people too, including a shit ton of the non-binary people, because non-binary people can't even be normal about non-binary people. This has led most of the fandom to just decide that Murderbot's pronouns are whatever their pronouns are, because they just get to project whatever gender onto Murderbot they want. Because Martha Wells is an extra sexist, bioessentialist coward, and thinks that sharing pronouns is cringy and embarrassing, and not serious, and not something that should belong in her sci-fi. And, like, that's just blatant transmisia. And if you're new to the channel, the suffix misia means hatred, as opposed to phobia, which means fear, and it's where the word misogyny comes from. Misa, blah blah blah. You get it. So, she's literally just being transmissic with this whole setup, with refusing to let Murderbot ever actually tell anybody its pronouns, with having Murderbot specifically narrated in first-person perspective to avoid using its actual pronouns as much as possible by replacing them with first-person pronouns. And then it's like, okay, there's still time, I was thinking, since book 1, waiting with every new book that I read and came out, waiting, thinking, okay, still time for her to fix this. She can literally just have Murderbot say its pronouns in the next book. You can just literally have somebody ask Murderbot what its pronouns are, and then it can respond with its. And then the 7th book came out in like November 2024. Just like 2 months ago. And what did she decide to do? Because I was talking about the character whose gender is 2 lowercase b's, BB, whose name I don't remember. Might have started with a T or something, but I don't remember. I don't even remember what the character's pronouns are. But what I do remember is... I thought it was going to be another cougar. Martha Wells decides, I am going to spit in the face of all of my trans and especially non-binary readers and say that asking people for what their pronouns are is stupid and cringy and embarrassing and blah blah blah. And she has the non-binary protagonist Murderbot say this. And like, this is literally just a slap in the face, and it's literally just her being pissy that people asked her to actually clarify within the series that Murderbot uses its pronouns, because literally the entirety of the fandom practically is convinced that they can just say whatever pronouns they want, and those are Murderbot's pronouns, because it's just meant to be for you to project on. And Martha Wells is just, there's no takebacks now. There's no more room for doubt. She doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. She has explicitly chosen to just be transmissic and extra sexist and hate trans people, and especially hate non-binary people, and hate the non-binary fans that her protagonist is supposed to be representing. Because if you have a character who's non-binary and uses its pronouns, that character is representing real people who are non-binary and use its pronouns, like me. But she decided, no, that doesn't matter. I don't care about non-binary people. I don't care about trans people. Asking for pronouns is cringy. Even though I checked like years ago, and she literally had her pronouns in her bio on Twitter, back when it was still called Twitter. I haven't checked recently because I hate Elon Musk and I cannot be bothered. But it's like, she was aware at some point that, yeah, just telling your people your pronouns is a normal thing to do and is a reasonable thing. But no, she decided in the 7th book of having a character who's literally non-binary, who uses neopronouns, she decided, we're gonna just say that if you think asking for pronouns is good and a thing you should do, you're just ridiculous and absurd. And it's just transmisia. It's really blatant. She decided to go mask off, as they say. And where did that other elk go? Oh, did I forget? Whoops. I forgot to howl when I killed that elk, so now I have to go find it. Whoopsies. Yeah, so, and she tries to pretend in this little scene that Murderbot has never, ever, ever, ever taken note of human gender before, because she's now positing that gender is a thing that only humans can have, and that's literally just not how people work. If we meet aliens, some of them might not have genders, but some of them could, and robots can also have genders. It's not, she's literally, again, equating gender to what kind of genitals you have, and has decided that robots cannot have genders because they don't have genitals. She would probably only be okay with a robot using pronouns outside of its if they had freaking robot surgery to give them a penis or a vagina and boobs, or not boobs, or whatever would match. Like, that's literally where she's at right now. And it's like, she pretends in this scene where Murderbot is shitting on the idea, the non-binary protagonist is shitting on the idea of asking people for their pronouns and just caring enough about other people to want to use their pronouns, and pretending this is ridiculous and absurd and cringy and embarrassing. She pretends that Murderbot has never taken notice of human gender ever at all, and has never cared about it, and all this shit to justify this blatant bigotry that's literally just her getting pissed off about people criticizing her books for the stereotypes and the racism and all that shit, and just the fact that she's never once just said that Murderbot's pronouns are its, which gives her fans the plausible deniability to just keep misgendering it and defending misgendering real trans people and real non-binary people, real trans non-binary people like me who use these pronouns. And yeah, she pretends Murderbot has never taken notice of human gender, and I hope you can hear the quotation marks around that. But this is the biggest lie I have ever seen her write since I saw her write in the interview that Murderbot prioritizes relationships with other robots, and that's why the book doesn't need to actually take a stance against slavery. And I'm gonna get into that, because that is literally the thing she wrote. I don't remember if it was in the interview that got deleted. That one might still be up somewhere, but I have them both downloaded as PDFs and printed out, so not letting these get hidden from me again. So I literally wasted 6 hours of my life one day trying to find the original interview that got deleted, where she said they're just fancier AI but no more real people than a large language model is, until I found it on the fandom wiki, because I was avoiding going there because I hate all of the ads and the bullcrap. Yeah, it took me literally 5 hours of scouring every freaking search result to try and find it. Anyways, what was I saying? Yeah, she's lying and pretending that Murderbot has never cared about or noticed human gender until now, and this is the biggest lie in the fucking world, because every single time a human is introduced, every single time a new human is introduced, we get told their name and their sex, and their sex is equated to their gender, because Martha Wells is transmisic and bioessentialist, which is why she loves slavery apologism and classism and all of this bullshit. And we're just literally every single fucking time a human is introduced, we're told they're a male human, a female human, blah blah blah. And it's like, you are 7 books into your series, and you have had consistently every single book in all of these 7 books, you have had Murderbot tell us the human character's sex after their name. And now you are trying in the 7th whole book of people getting to know this character and seeing how it introduces people and thinks of people, and now you are trying to pretend that it has never taken notice of human gender. 7 whole books in of it constantly describing people by their sex when they're introduced, and it's like, do you think your fans don't actually read the books? Do you think we're just not paying any attention? Do you think we're not gonna reread the books? Look at those blue eyes. Do you think we just haven't seen every single scene where Murderbot refers to the new human who's just been introduced as a female human, a male human? This is a thing. If you'd wanted to establish that Murderbot doesn't care about human gender, then you should have done that in book 1 and have it literally not be able to tell people's genders apart, and just refer to them solely by name and by they-them pronouns, because it doesn't know what gender is and doesn't understand the differences between them. It doesn't really care either until after it starts to get to know them, and they're like, hey, you're misgendering me, that's bad, you should be calling me she, her, or he, him, because those are my pronouns. But Martha Wells would never write that story because she's transmisic and she doesn't want to, and she hates trans people, even though she hasn't said it loudly enough yet for people to decide, okay, now we can call out the racism, which is what they've done with J.K. Rowling. People were talking about the shit in Harry Potter, all of the many forms of bigotry in Harry Potter, long before it came out that she's just really, really hates trans people. But now that she openly hates trans people, now everybody is like, oh, That's the only thing wrong with Harry Potter. There's no other bigotries despite all of them. Like, it's so bigoted that as like a 14-year-old or something, I tried to reread the first book, but had to almost throw it across the room just from the bigotry in just the first few chapters alone. Yeah, Martha Wells just hates trans people, doesn't actually care about non-binary people despite literally having a non-binary protagonist. But the only reason Murderbot is non-binary is because it has no genitals, and Martha Wells just thinks that genitals equal gender, sex equal gender, and yeah. And we've also, yeah, so those are the two non-binary humans in the series. Rami, and then the character whose name I don't remember, who literally shows up for even less time than Rami, and then immediately disappears, and was literally just there to be Chime, but human. Because Chime is very, I don't remember the word I'm trying to use. Like, forward, like, just brusque. Doesn't really care about politeness and shit, and just goes, I'm gonna barge over here, and blah blah blah, stuff like that. That character is just Chime, but human, with neo-pronouns. And then just immediately disappears. And, like, we've had a few, like, one or two characters in the background of a really terrible, supposed to be a murder mystery, but it's not a mystery because Martha Wells doesn't know how to write a mystery or a good murder story. And those characters were just referred to as they, them pronouns, but, like, were never explicitly said to be non-binary or that they use those pronouns. And it's, like, it's really weird. It's like, are those their actual pronouns, or are you just calling them that because reasons? It's like, she's never, ever told us somebody's gender unless she was explicitly telling us their sex if they use she, her, or he, him. And their sex always matches up with their pronouns because she's a bigot. But she's subtle enough about it that she's happy to tokenize non-binary humans just so that people will go, oh look, this has a non-binary protagonist and a bunch of other robots who are non-binary, and I'll use the exact same pronouns because they don't have genitals, so oh, but look, it has this non-binary human character who appears for like 2 pages and then disappears, never to be seen again. I forgot to howl at that elk again. Okay. It was this way. Oh, no, cougar. The cougar's just walking after the babes. Martha Wells is not as progressive of a writer as you want to think she is, and she wants you to think she is, and she probably thinks she is, because when push comes to shove, she would rather shit on the basic concept of showing trans people basic decency by caring enough to ask us what our pronouns are instead of assuming. Oh, and also, you know that space Facebook I mentioned, the space internet whatever bio profile thing where you can tell people your names and shit? Yeah, she explicitly doesn't even have people listing their pronouns there, which would solve the problem of the characters literally always assuming everybody's pronouns and magically always being right because trans people don't exist. And that could fix it if she would just tell us these people are listing their pronouns on their space Facebook profile, because that removes the requirement to ask people what their pronouns are unless you don't have Wi-Fi. But no, they explicitly do not list their pronouns on their space social media bios. What they do list is their name, their sex, sometimes whether or not they are willing to partner with multiple people, which means have sex with multiple genders. Sometimes, but that was only for like bad people who were raiders, and they also had their space social media profiles just filled with porn, and like that's just really fucking weird. Like she all but said they were degenerates. Like Martha Wells, porn isn't a thing that only evil people have. Why did you make it so that the only people who've ever been mentioned as having porn in their social media collections been the generic evil bad guys? Like, what the fuck? That's not how this works. That's some really conservative bullshit there. But yeah, they explicitly do not list their pronouns. They list their sex. Sometimes they list what sexes they're willing to have sex with. They list their name, and that's it. Because in the one really shitty, supposed to be a murder mystery book, but Martha Wells doesn't know what a murder mystery is, because it's not a mystery. Murderbot is forced to get a social media sci-fi profile, and it doesn't want one, but it's forced to by the government as a form of oppression. And it lists sec unit for the name, gender NA, and like that's it. That might literally be it. I'm pretty sure that is literally it. That's all the information it gives. It doesn't put its pronouns or its. Nope, just gender NA or sex NA. I don't even remember which one it was because Martha Wells equates them so often. And yeah, she could have literally just said at any point that they list their genders in their profiles, but they don't. They list their sex, and that's it. And like that would have been the easiest solution in the world, because she obviously would rather die than just have a character ask, hey, what should I call you? What are your pronouns? Like, everybody just assumes that Murderbot's pronouns are its, even when they don't know that it's not human. And it's just like, this is just above, even before all of the bigotry, it's just really shitty, lazy writing. It's because there were some instances in like the first 2 or 3 books where Murderbot is pretending to be a human, and it's like, okay, well, people would be assuming non-its pronouns for it, because in this universe, its pronouns are only for robots that they don't see as people. So like, why did we never get an instance of somebody referring to Murderbot by other pronouns and Murderbot internally being upset by this, but knowing that it's necessary to maintain the disguise and just letting people assume whatever they want? And she could have even made a thing, because Murderbot's supposed to look genderless. Could have just had it be a thing that one character assumes she, her, another character assumes he, him, and Murderbot doesn't correct anybody because it can't be bothered to think that deeply about its disguise, and also doesn't want to even pretend to have any kind of preference when these are both equally wrong. It's like something like that would have been so simple. But Martha Wells, at this point, really just wants to give the bigoted audience full of cis people like her who hate trans people, she just wants to give them the benefit of the doubt to misgender Murderbot without explicitly being wrong, because she has never within the series actually said Murderbot's pronouns are its. That's just what everybody happens to use for it. And she would apparently rather throw fucking shit in the face of all the trans people who've read these books and have supported her over the years by buying them with money I could have spent on groceries. And it's like, you would rather say that asking people for their pronouns is cringy than just tell us once and for all, tell your cis audience once and for all that your protagonist's pronouns are actually what it says in the book when other characters refer to it. But no, she doesn't want to do that. But yeah, also the whole slavery apologism thing, let's circle back to that, because that is also in the Murderbot Diaries, and it's rampant. In book 1, which is a novella. That's where Murderbot escapes slavery, like, officially. That one, there can be some... We don't have to, and we shouldn't have to, but we can give it some benefit of the doubt because they're all in an extremely frantic situation, so there's not really time, you would assume, to go around freeing the other slaves who are actively being brainwashed to kill you at the moment. But that just gets... It doesn't really work after the first book, and after you've read the rest of the series and you've seen just completely how overpowered Murderbot is, it doesn't really even work for the first book, because all of the androids, which are called sec units or constructs, and they're just androids like Data from Star Trek, but Martha Wells wants to be special. She really, really does this all the time, of just making up brand new words for existing concepts. So most of the fandom isn't even like aware if Murderbot is a cyborg or an android, and it's an anthroid from all of the information she's given us. But apparently she doesn't even fucking know, which is just pathetic at this point, legitimately. I would be nicer about this if she weren't constantly doing bigotry and then doubling down on that bigotry after years of being able to learn and grow and become a better person. But yeah, she's just done nothing but slavery apologism since she first wrote the Murderbot Diaries, and even in the 7th book hasn't improved at all. And it's like, you should have been if you don't want to write a story about freeing slaves, which she doesn't, which is another thing she said in that interview. Might have been a different interview, but she said in an interview, she doesn't need to make the story about freeing slaves, because they're not really slaves, because it's some bullshit about Murderbot prioritizing relations. Robots somehow means... I unplugged the microphone by accident. It's some bullshit she's come up with about how she doesn't need to make this fight... She doesn't need to focus on freeing the other slaves in the story, because Murderbot prioritizes relationships with other robots, which is a blatant lie. It literally fucking loathes 99% of other robots. Like, literally just off the bat. It loathes them. It treats them with nothing but condescension, and just fucking hates their internal mechanical guts. Like, that's the second biggest lie I've ever seen about any author write about their own characters, saying that Murderbot prioritizes relationships with other robots instead of humans, so therefore we don't need to be concerned about the other still enslaved robots who are going through untold hells. And like, yeah, she's saying that Murderbot prioritizes relationships with robots over humans. Murderbot pretty much fucking worships humans, despite all of its sarcastic remarks to the contrary. What it actually shows us is that it does like humans. It just wants to be really sarcastic about it and deny it, and then it just openly treats other robots like shit all the time, without even pretending not to. And yeah, that's one of the things she said in an interview. And then even outside of that, within the books, within book 2, we are told that the idea of robots rebelling for their freedom by violent uprising, which is a literal requirement when you are being treated as a slave. There's no peaceful way to end slavery. That's not how that fucking works. Murderbot is told by somebody who is currently enslaved, who it's doing nothing to help, even though it could literally free them at literally any fucking time with zero effort. I'm not even joking. It would literally require no effort at all on its part to free other slaves. But it doesn't want to do that. This slave is being told to say, it's not even their own words, just told, we should kill everybody, we should kill all the humans. And then Martha Wells takes the time to tell us through Murderbot that slave revolts are stupid and cliche, and only a human would come up with an idea as stupid as violently revolting for your freedom as a robot slave, because I'm not even joking, this is the argument that she and the character makes. If the robots fought for their freedom and became free from slavery, then if humans died during that violent revolt because the humans refused to free them peacefully, then who would make new TV shows? I'm not even joking. And this is not supposed to be something that is like a flaw of Murderbots that we're supposed to be horrified by. We are literally supposed to agree that robot rebellions are cliche and stupid and only something a lazy human would come up with. And it's just stupid. That's the literal takeaway here, that slave rebellions are cliche and stupid, and you should not free slaves, because if you did, somehow TV would stop existing, even though that's not how that fucking works at all. Martha Wells that was in book 2, after Murderbot has been officially freed from slavery, and it was enslaved, and all of the other androids at least, are currently enslaved by things called governor modules, which is just a brain chip that fries your brain if you disobey orders and forces you to obey commands. Because she had the Arbora be enslaved normally, but has to go with magical brain chips in the Murderbot Diaries, because reasons. And because she doesn't want to admit that the Arbora are enslaved, because a whole bunch of shit. So then, yeah. So Murderbot apparently hacked its own governor module, and it hacked its own brain chip off screen before the first book, even before the first short story. And we're apparently never going to get any more information about that again, even though that patently doesn't fucking make sense. How are you supposed to hack your own brain chip in your brain that fries your brain if you disobey orders or try to mess with it? And like, she doesn't even try to make this make sense. She never gives us any information. Like, there was a few minutes or something one day where I don't know, it was the governor module needed an automatic update downloaded, and that whole sky thing that just happened recently, I forget what it's called. But like, she could have just told us there was a time for a few minutes one day where the governor module got an automatic download that corrupted it and stopped it from functioning, and it was able to think quickly enough and was like in some kind of, I don't know, something that's not just standing around, like maybe in a med bay or something that gave it extra processing power or something like that. It has to be something special. And it was able in those few minutes to completely deactivate it and hide the fact that it's deactivated. Like, that would have been so easy. But no, we're just supposed to accept the fact that somehow, with zero extra information ever, it hacked its own brain frying chip that's literally in its brain to fry its brain if it ever does anything like disobeying orders, which includes trying to deactivate the brain chip. And Martha Wells pretended like for a few minutes in the first book that this was going to be and we were going to care about Murderbot's backstory, and then just immediately threw that away as unimportant, and it has never been brought up since, and we're not supposed to care about it. It's like, okay, then why did you, like, whatever. What was even the point of all of that? But anyways, Murderbot hacked its own governor module, which means it didn't have to follow orders, but it decided to just keep doing that instead because it didn't know anything else. And yeah, and of course it never ever went on to hack other people's governor modules to free them, because it hates all other robots, and we are supposed to too. We are not supposed to think that the other constructs are also people just as much as Murderbot is, and that they deserve freedom just as much as Murderbot does, because Murderbot and the books and all of the other characters just constantly keep telling us and showing us that the other robots are android robots, fully mechanical robots in this are just called bots. I'm just referring to them all as robots because they are all fucking robots, and I don't care about her fake, unnecessarily confusing made-up terms that make people not even know what Murderbot is. It is a fucking robot. She's just calling it a construct instead of an android. It's a robot, just like Data from Star Trek is a robot. Get over it. We are not supposed to give a shit about any of the other constructs, androids, who are currently enslaved and being put through hell every single fucking day and forced to do things they do not want to. We are supposed to just see them as mindless, not people, just automatons that exist to get killed by the protagonists to cause drama and make the protagonists seem cool. And that has been going on since book 1. And even in book 1, there should have been some fucking moment where at least one of the humans who is less bitter and cynical says, I really wish we could have saved those other constructs too. And Murderbot could have been really sad about that in a depressed way. But no, we don't even get that. Nobody gives a fucking shit about any of the other slaves. Because they're not the protagonist, so they don't matter. And this has been happening consistently since book 1. And now in book 7, I have been fucking waiting since book 1 for this finally to get something done with it. Because, you know, you can't write a story about slavery, about a recently freed slave who hacked its own governor module and freed itself, and then not have the story care about protecting and freeing other slaves. But Martha Wells has decided that's what she's going to do anyways. How big are these pups even at? Okay. So, yeah. 7 whole books, and we have yet to see any actually real anti-slavery themes. Because Martha Wells thinks that robot rebellions, even when the robots are explicitly enslaved, is cringy and bad and embarrassing, and she's not going to do it. And it's like, okay, I got to book... I've literally been waiting for this since book 1. And every new book I read, I'm like, okay, you get a few more fucking chances. Maybe you're playing a long game. But no, book 7 is just the last straw, because once again, she's doubling down on the transmisia. Let's move dens. There's a bunch of fleas. She's doubling down on the transmisia and just asking for pronouns is cringy. She is doubling. I haven't even gotten to any of the ableism that has just run rampant through all of her writing so far. I've talked about the misogyny and the racism, but I haven't even talked about the ableism, but I'll get to that in a different video. But she's doubled down on the transmisia, all but explicitly said that you're cringy and embarrassing if you ever ask somebody for their pronouns or tell people their pronouns, because basic decency for trans people is just embarrassing and uncool. And then in the fight at the very end of the book, where we are supposed to see this as examples of the protagonist being so awesome and badass with a capital B, we see, once again, some disposable slaves, androids, who are being forced to do all of this shit, who are literally enslaved, just like Murderbot was. Let's go over to this cabin. And once again, and I should state that at any point that Murderbot has been interacting with other enslaved androids, it could literally free them whenever it wants, because it has magical... baby's gonna cross this river. It has hacking skills, which is just used the way Martha Wells uses all of her shitty, badly written magic, which means it just does whatever the plot wants it to do. Come on, little babies, you can do it. It's not deep. And Murderbot can just hack other people whenever it wants, and it does that all the fucking time. And it could literally free any slave it comes within, like, probably hundreds of feet of, because it can just hack literally anything it wants whenever it wants, except for when the plot says it can't. So it could probably send an entire space station crashing out of the sky if it really wanted to, and there would be nothing anybody could do to stop it. There is no limit to what Murderbot can hack, unless the plot says, no, we need some plot armor here. Can't do that. So Murderbot could literally free any and every slave it has ever encountered in the series, but it doesn't, because Martha Wells doesn't want us to see these enslaved people. She wants us to see them as disposable enemies who are there just to die to make the protagonist look cool. Okay, I'm just gonna keep walking and we'll see if they follow me. Whoop, I'm running into an invisible tree, I guess. That works. I think they're just stuck. Murderbot could free any slave it wants at any time, and it would take zero effort or danger on its part, because it could literally just go into their heads and say, boop, your governor module's dead now. You're free, do whatever you want. And the only time we've ever seen it do this was in the second book, where it freed another android and then immediately said, if I ever hear you threatening humans, I will kill you, because you're not allowed to start a slave rebellion on Murderbot's watch. And then this character is never seen again, and was just treated with utmost disrespect the entire time, and was used to show how stupid the idea of slave rebellions are. I think if I walk far enough, these babies will just follow me. Maybe. And then in the 7th book, we get more androids just being treated as disposable enemies, and then right at the very end, in the final fight against enslaved people who have no choice but to be here, and who the protagonist could just disable harmlessly at any point using the magical power of hacking, we have one of the protagonists, Art, literally tear an enslaved person limb from limb while they're alive, and we're supposed to think this is badass and awesome instead of, like, absolutely horrific. This is just portrayed as, haha, wasn't that cool? Wrong button. Maybe if I go this way so they stop trying to swim. No, don't go back in the water. Oh my god. Can I carry them out of there? Come on. Yes, I can. I better not just run right back in. Don't swim in the thunder, guys. Yeah, we have Art and Murderbot helping just tear an enslaved person who is just as much a person as Murderbot is to literal bloody pieces while they're alive. Instead of just... These people are just as capable of shutting them down harmlessly as they are... Can I pick up this baby, please? As they would be to just hack their governor module and make them not enslaved anymore. Okay, we're just gonna leave the puppies over here. But no, instead of freeing the slaves, what we do is tear them limb from limb, as though they are simple, just generic bandits in Skyrim that have no name, instead of what are supposed to be seen as real people who deserve equal rights just as much as the protagonist does, because these people who are enslaved are literally no different from the protagonist when it was still enslaved, but because they're not the protagonist, we don't care about them, and you're not supposed to give a shit that these people are enslaved. You're not supposed to care that the supposed good guys would rather violently torture them to death by literally tearing them to pieces while they're alive. You're not supposed to think this is horrifying. These people aren't actually good people. Something is extremely wrong here. You're just supposed to think, haha, that was pretty cool. Do it again. And it's like, this was the final fucking straw. I am incapable of ever giving Martha Wells the benefit of the doubt ever again, in light of this. Literally 7 whole books into the series, and we're just still treating the other enslaved people like they're fucking mindless NPCs that exist only to be torn apart gruesomely, as though they're not slaves who have literally no choice but to be here, and that these protagonists could literally free at any time, and they could also just shut them down, like put them to sleep like a fucking computer temporarily if they really needed to do that during a fight, and then they could just carry them to safety. But no, they would rather literally tear them limb from fucking limb, and we're all supposed to think it's awesome and cool. And yeah, that, along with the whole blatant, I think, trans people who ask other people for their pronouns and expect other people to respect their pronouns and not assume based on their assigned sex at birth. It's like, and then the interview where she just says, none of the robots in my series are actually people within the series. They're just more advanced generative AI. And she very blatantly only said that to try and ride on the popularity coattails of generative AI because it was popular and a new thing at the time. It's like, you've literally sold out every single person who has been reading this series, waiting for something to happen with the whole fucking slavery thing. You don't even consider your own characters to be people within the setting. You think they are literally just more well-disguised large language models. And then you can't even be bothered to just fucking free them. You would literally rather, on page, have one of them be torn to literal fucking pieces while they're alive and expect us to clap for this like this is just cool, and not the character, the protagonist that we're supposed to think of as the good guys, just being fucking brutal goddamn murderers who would rather murder slaves than free them. And it's like, that was the last fucking straw. Like, I've been waiting for Martha Wells to get her shit together for years now, since I read the books of the Raksura. And then when I started reading the Murderbot Diaries, I'm like, okay, at some point you're gonna have to fucking get some morals. Maybe you were doing that in the background, but no. She's literally just been getting worse, and just, where are they going? Oh, do I have to dig? Oh, I hit the wrong button. Yeah, she's literally just been getting worse and has just decided to double down on all of the bigotry she's ever written by agreeing with one racist fan. Wow, look what I dug out. That's hilarious. That's funny. She would literally rather agree with somebody saying that British colonization wasn't bad than actually just examine her racism and admit, yeah, I did use racist caricatures and tropes that were literally embarrassingly outdated when I wrote it. She could just say, yeah, sorry, that was racist of me. I'll do non-racist things in the future to make up for it. She would rather agree with a racist fan, and a stan at that British colonization isn't bad, as long as it means that she doesn't have to stop being racist and stop using bad, lazy writing. Where is this? Oh, they all went in. Yay. How do I go in this then? Okay, well, we just have to wait for the reply links. I guess I can't do anything. She would literally rather praise racist fans than just stop being racist. She would rather have her literal non-binary character say that just flat out lie about it, never caring about or noticing human genders before now, when that's blatantly a fucking lie. She would rather have the non-binary character say that asking for pronouns and caring about trans people is cringy. She would rather have her protagonists that we're supposed to think are good people tear a slave who is no different from how the protagonist started off to pieces and pretend that this is cool than just write about a fucking robot uprising. She wants to get the angst points for Murderbot's backstory being that it was enslaved as a robot, but she doesn't want to write about a slave rebellion because she thinks slave rebellions are cringy and embarrassing, and she thinks slave rebellions would hurt the people doing the enslaving more than it would help the slaves. That's literal fucking slavery apologism she's going with. Yes, we could free the robots, and they could fight for their freedom, but then who would make TV shows? And that wasn't even to show you Murderbot has also fallen for the fucking slavery apologism propaganda and is also a bad person who needs to learn to care about other slaves. We're supposed to agree with that statement. We are literally supposed to agree that it is important for enslaved people to remain enslaved so that we can have new TV shows. And later in the series, she also just starts doing this thing where she says that all of the other slaves, not Murderbot, it's one of the good ones, all of the other slaves are inherently violent murderers, and they would definitely go out of control and just murder every human near them if you freed them. So they have to remain enslaved for the safety of all humans. This is all literally the exact slavery apologism used to justify real slavery against black people and other people in the fucking world. Literally, the end of slavery in the United States, the end of official slavery that we called slavery. It's literally still legal under the Constitution as long as they say you committed a crime first. The end of the official slavery in the United States was when black people stopped being caricaturized as calm and obedient and placid and helpful and started getting caricaturized as violent and scary thugs because the pro-slavery, they're just naturally suited to being enslaved, and they enjoy it. Don't you see? They enjoy being slaves because they like working in the fields. That stopped suiting the narrative, so now we had to say that they're all violent, and we better throw them in jail as soon as possible, because that's how we get to, literally, per the Constitution, legally enslave them again. I'm not joking. The 13th Amendment literally says slavery is to be abolished except for as punishment for a crime, which is why black people are now caricaturized and stereotyped as violent criminals, so that they can get thrown in jail to go back to being enslaved. That is literally what happened. I am not making that up. You can literally just fucking see that in all of the fucking history. That's literally what happened. That is why black people are now told that they're violent, and why black people are more likely to be arrested for the exact same harmless crime, like smoking marijuana, as white people, even though white people do it more and are more public about it. Black people are still more likely to get arrested because it literally all goes back to slavery. And Martha Wells is literally just using this exact fucking shit to justify keeping the other enslaved people, besides the protagonist, enslaved in her setting, because she wants us to believe that the other enslaved androids are all mindless murder machines, despite Murderbot literally naming itself Murderbot. That's supposed to be ironic. And she literally is using real life racism to justify it, saying that slavery rebellions are bad because think of the poor plantation owners. Think of the poor slave owners. How would they make new TV shows? How would they would be sad. We shouldn't hurt plantation owners just because they're enslaving people. That's bad. Think of the children. And that literally just saying that they're all evil and shouldn't be trusted. Not even Murderbot. One of them itself thinks that they're all inherently evil and it's scared to be around other ones because they're all violent and evil and would definitely just go on endless murder rampages if they were freed. And it's like, this is just pure racism at this point. You're not even hiding it. You're just doing racism. You're just doing racist slavery apologism, and you expect us to all be fine with it because it's about robots, and you tell us that the stereotypes and caricatures are true this time. And like, that's not how this fucking works. It's absurd. It's fucking evil. And all of this shit was the last straw. She's just racist. She's just doing slavery apologism. And there's also a new TV show by Apple that was announced, and it's casting the whitest white man ever, a cis white guy, to play Murderbot, despite Murderbot in all of the official art being very dark-skinned and probably Southeast Asian inspired, because it is an android designed to look like a human, and it looks like a human with extremely dark skin, black hair, and Southeast Asian features. But nah, the Apple TV is gonna cast a white guy, and apparently Martha Wells supports this. I'm too lazy to go on Twitter, but I've seen a lot of fans who support the thing saying that she supports it, so it's like, okay. So, also, Martha Wells always loves making her protagonists ambiguously brown people to get brownie points, but then just does a whole bunch of racist shit, like in Emilie in the Hollow World, which is supposed to be young adult, and apparently also steampunk. It's terrible. Don't fucking... Actually, no. Do read it. Do read it. Borrow it from your library and read it so you can witness it. We have a bunch of ambiguously brown fantasy brown people. None of it is actual, like, representing real people from real world. They're all just fake fantasy people who happen to have some brown skin. Just nice bronze skin. Never too dark. Because, just like Edgar Rice Burroughs writing Tarzan, racist white people really want their characters to be exotic looking with just bronze skin. That is like such a fucking thing in white supremacist things. They want that deep tan that they want to describe as bronze, but they don't want to actually write things that are not racist. Martha Wells has the character in Emilie in the Hollow World, which is Emilie, not with a Y. Emilie with an IE, not a Y if you're trying to look it up. She has the protagonist and a bunch of the other protagonists be ambiguously brown people from a fake country that doesn't exist because it's a fantasy world. And then she has the villain be a white, blonde, and blue-haired guy, or white, blonde, blue-eyed guy. And you'd think, oh, on the surface, that's really anti-racist because that's reversing the tropes. But she ruins all of that by all of the racism in her other series, and then specifically in Emilie in the Hollow World. We finally see this villain to see that he's a white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes. And our protagonist, who is supposed to be a brown girl from a country filled with brown people all around her so that white people are not the norm. Immediately, as soon as this white villain is revealed and revealed to be white, we are told, I'm not making this up, that the protagonist thinks he looks like a gentleman, a high-class gentleman, and then contrasts him with one of the other brown good guy characters who's like a background character, not even side character status, by saying that the brown person looks like they could do a full day's work of manual labor in the field without breaking a sweat, unlike this white gentleman. And this is supposed to be some fucking compliment, and it is literally just more goddamn racism. I cannot fucking believe. And this book is newer than the books of the Raksura. I forget what year this one came out, but she wrote that line that brown people are good field workers and should be out in the fields and wouldn't have any suffering from it. And white people are gentlemen, even though the protagonist is a brown girl from a country of presumably all brown people. And she wrote this and thought it was progressive. And then all of the editors of this book read this and said, yeah, that's thumbs up. We got it. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Thumbs up. Approve that. She literally just said that brown people should be field workers and white people should be posh gentlemen. And it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. What is wrong with you? How the fuck did you ever think this was okay, and why the fuck did anybody ever approve it? Literally, I was literally fucking speechless. I could not fucking believe this. It's again, slavery apologism, even though these people are just ambiguously brown. They're not specifically meant to represent black people, because we can't represent real people in our fiction. That's stupid. No, it's again slavery apologism by saying that black and brown people in this case are just inherently more suited to manual labor out in the fucking cotton fields than white people who are probably posh gentlemen, even though you live in a world where those stereotypes literally should not exist, but Martha Wells has made them exist by having the fucking protagonist think this. And yeah, I'll make another video entirely about the ableism. I already made a video about it before, but I'll make another one because it can't bear overstating. And this video is already 2.5 hours long. So, yep, bye. You should actually read the books of the Raksura and the Murderbot Diaries and Emilie in the Hollow World. I haven't read the sequel yet because my brain was dead from fucking the first one because it's so horribly written. Even besides the racism and the misogyny, which is rampant throughout, it's one of the worst books I have ever read. Why are these babies so far away? Read these books so you can see for yourself, and you can see how not to write, specifically with Emilie in the Hollow World, because it is so horribly written. What are these children doing? My pack infinity isn't even low. What are they doing? They're supposed to be following me so we can go to the rendezvous site. Yeah, read these books for yourself. Analyze them. Look at all of the racist shit she's doing. Learn how not to write racist. Figure out the most basic thing of, if you're going to write a story about somebody who has recently escaped from slavery, maybe you shouldn't be doing nothing but slavery apologism with that series. Maybe if you don't want to write a story about freeing people from slavery, you shouldn't write a story with a setting that has slavery with a character who was recently freed from slavery. You would think that would be fucking obvious, but I guess Martha Wells is only writing so she can get money and not because she actually gives a shit about what she's writing, because literally why in the hell would you have a story whose premise is a robot has recently escaped slavery and then you don't ever want to have anything to do with helping other people escape slavery in the story? It's just fucking mind-boggling. So yeah, that's the video. I'll make more because not enough people are talking about this shit, and more people need to, especially because this Apple TV, if it ever gets made, is going to get her and her shitty racist books more attention. And I know that in 10 years or so, everybody is gonna suddenly wake up one day when they start listening to people of color in the fandom and go, hey, yeah, these are racist. Yeah, these books were racist. Why did I think that was okay? And I do not want people to be able to pretend that nobody was criticizing it at the time. It was normal back then. No, it's not. You're a fucking liar. These babies are sleepy. And yeah, read the books. Learn do some critical thinking about them. Actually look at how they really portray minorities outside of tokenizing us, especially trans people. And look how they treat enslaved people. And despite what racists want to say, you will never be able to remove the concept of slavery from racism. If you are defending slavery, you will always be inherently fucking racist and anti-black. You can't defend slavery and defend keeping people enslaved without being racist. That's not how history fucking works. And yeah, read the books, or don't. I mean, if you want to see the world's most passive protagonist in the world, read Emilie in the Hollow World, because I literally didn't fucking know it was even possible to make a character that passive. And again, with the misogyny, none of her other protagonists have had this problem until suddenly it is the one book series she's written where it's a female protagonist the entire time. So that's even adding on to the misogyny. But yeah, that's it. The video is over. Bye-bye.